Space, the final frontier. Fans of that show probably just creamed their pants right now. But that's not the focus of this video. The focus of this video is an expedition, an exploration if you will, across the universe. To try and find the most ideal female champion to take out certain foes and do a lot of damage. I've got a bit of a love story to tell you, but it starts with a journey. Hi, welcome back to the channel. We're in space. Ooh, lots of crazy things happen in space. Lots of crazy things pass by. They don't really, because it's space. But still, it's nice to imagine these things. And even though I'm kicking off the video with a different flavour than normal, it's still in keeping with the RichTheMan style, by the way. I'm going to be talking about Nebula. I've got this bit of a kind of a love story with like love relationship with Nebula. I seem to be using her as much more of a champion. I just want to kind of share my kind of positive experience with people about this champion when it comes to taking down Iron Man Infinity War, right the way through to taking down, you know, a little bit more difficult content, mainly with shock damage, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Ever since Nebula was added into the game in May 2017, she's been very dormant within my roster and I haven't really felt any great need or want or desire to develop her further. And with quite a mediocre tech line, give or take some really decent champions, she is not well up there as a champion that people will want to develop. Until now. With her addition as a 5 and 6 star champion, for players this has meant that she's able to damage output a lot based on her shock based damage. And yet she's got other great points to her, with the fact that she is double immune, but the fact that she does this amazing shock damage is one of the key reasons. Her self repair or regeneration may seem to some players as not very good and difficult to trigger if you persevere with this champion, and any kind of mistake is rewarded in kind. With if the opponent does a high attack and it's like more than they normally do, then it does mean that this champion is going to regen quite a bit, which is a positive aspect, but it is a little bit of a negative to trigger that off. Me personally, I don't really care too much about that. It's all about that shock damage. So what brought about this video idea, and as well as the love that I got to show to Nebula? Well, it's nice to be talking positively about a champion first and foremost. The second thing is that I was looking for champions that could take down Iron Man Infinity War. I'm not saying that this would be a go-to champion for that, but I like the idea and concept of building up those charges, hitting in a parry and smashing with an L2 closer to the point where the champion's at 15%, or kind of going close to lower than 15%, because as we know, that auto block is a pain in the butt. My word, is it a pain in the butt. So what was the plan? As we said, it was all about building up those charges by holding block and then hitting through with the parry or with the well-timed block, whatever you want to call it, and then finally hitting off with an L2 to increase the amount of damage. As you can see here, doubles the amount of shock debuffs on the opponent, dealing 972.8 energy, and that is obviously based on the current starage level. Whatever starage you have, it does vary from star to star. So the 3 star is going to be different to the 4 star, 4 stars different to 5 star, blah 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 blah. You get the idea. But that's not the only thing at our disposal. We could use the L3 for the point of contact, but it plays about of a lot of, oh well, we've got to get him down, he's going to be on auto block by the time of 15%. It can be a bit frustrating. Yes, so maybe that may not be a good thing, but still I liked what I was using. I like the idea of finding different champions to take down different bits of content. It doesn't always have to be about Blade or the kind of the lead champion or a newer champion. Sometimes it's nice to kind of revisit those old champions, and I guess that's why Kabam do those new synergies in game, because it does mean that you're able to then use your old champions and they feel a little bit more updated, though they haven't been brought into the same strength of the meta today. It's an ongoing issue that I have and frustration with new champions and older champions. I moan about it a lot. I'll continue. Nebula synergies are pretty darn pathetic when it comes to how you structure this champion. And I've even found better usage out of using a different synergy group, putting her in. Anything that develops anything good with armor and perfect block is a better suit, especially if you're considering you're going to spend most of the battle kind of cowering away, trying to then apply the holding, which is obviously the holding down the block, to then do the electro charges. So if you're carrying away and doing it, then effectively you're going to get hit. So you need armor and you need to also have perfect block chance increased. And even looking at my Nebula, it's a block proficiency of 59%. armor rating of 12%. Two things that, well, the armor is pathetic for a tech champion, and also block proficiency I would have liked to have seen a bit higher. So one thing that I really wish for Kabam to do is just maybe up those, especially if considering that a lot of the champion's damage is done through her, as I said, holding and kind of storing up those electrode charges and then heading off and applying. So you're going to be taking damage through your block, and also through doing the perfect block chance is not going to be, well, perfect. So that's why that synergy of improvement, which largely will be a Guardians of the Galaxy one, is best suited in my opinion if you're using this champion as a lead questing champion. An example of which can be found here. Perfect block chance increased, more armor, a little bit of crit damage, but it's all the emphasis on the stuff that is good for your defensive side of things and really kind of helping out this champion and boosting up. I do think now with the changes to Alliance Wars and the unpredictability of the nodes, that certain champions that do different debuff effects are going to be a little bit more effective for usage. So as we know, we've got bleed. That is going to be an immunity that well, rules out a lot of champions that do huge amounts of bleed damage. So champions that do other debuffs, will they be more effective? Will Kabam eventually say to themselves, hey, let's make all debuffs unavailable in Alliance Wars? And if they do, you can stick that where the sun don't shine, because I don't think people will be too happy about that. There's a couple more positives to mention, but I don't really use this first one quite so much because it's a little bit more difficult to trigger off for the full effectivency side of things. But it's, if you want a less than effective type of power drain, then the SP1 could be for you. If you got some debuff effects on the enemy, then you're able to stop a lot of power that the enemy is getting. And the other thing is ability accuracy of robots reduced by 20% per electroshock charge. It's not an amazing thing that you go, oh yay, that's going to make such a difference, but it helps in some ways. Now, what started this kind of like love affair with Nebula, I just felt that she's become more of a underrated champion, which has got a lot more popular, especially with the release of her as a 6-star within the game. She applies so much shock damage that is just fun, and that's the greatest thing in the game, because not a lot of stuff is overly fun. It's very competitive, it's very much based on skill, and sometimes it's difficult to find an ounce of fun about that, especially with the intense grind. But applying some huge amounts of shock damage, you know, we're also looking for champions to take out Iron Man Infinity War and kind of getting past that last 15%, and other difficult champions, especially when it comes to changes in Alliance Wars. If all like bleeds are going to be taken out, poisons are going to be attacked, you know, it's just like you need a champion that's going to be putting out a lot of damage, and Nebula can indeed do that. And she's not without her weaknesses. There are problems with the fact that she doesn't damage output a huge amount, and also when you're building up and holding on those electro charges, you can either choose to be a little bit more cautious and put in small amounts at a time as you're doing well-timed blocks, or building up a huge amount of charges and putting in a great amount of damage and then hitting the L2 to double it. Thank you very much for watching this video, this voyage, this odyssey into a champion that I think is particularly good, especially when going up against certain parts of content and other champions. I've got this idea to continue on the series, but maybe call it like the good, the bad and the ugly, and pick 3 champions. One is being good, one is being bad, and one being ugly. I've got a poll that's going to be listed right up here, and if you want me to continue the series, there's going to be a thing saying yes, continue a series, or do it as a good, the bad and the ugly, and no, don't do it. Focus on other things like news and other things, like trying to be funny. In any case, I'm going to return back to my journey into space and see some flying Dave heads and Brian heads. Like and subscribe. Catch you later. A green screen here. It's all green. It's a wall. It's weird. It's not space.